I never thought a quiet Tuesday morning would begin with the sound of a child sobbing, but that's exactly how this nightmare started, and the image of those tiny shaking hands still hits me like a punch to the chest every time I replay it in my head. I heard it as I was stepping onto my porch, thin, breathless, panicked crying, and when I looked down the street, I saw my neighbor's little boy, Liam, clutching at his empty backpack like something precious had just been ripped away from him. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from, because what happened next sent shockwaves through our entire neighborhood, and still feels unreal even saying it out loud. The sun wasn't even fully up yet, just bleeding orange through the clouds, but I felt my heartbeat spike as I jogged toward him, already sensing something was terribly wrong. Liam had a condition everyone on our street knew. He needed a compact, portable breathing assist machine that stayed with him at all times, clipped to the side of his bag in a hard shell case, except now that case was nowhere. I knelt in front of him, my chest tightening as he gasped out the only words he managed. A lady took it. She said she was allowed. At first, I genuinely thought he meant a paramedic or maybe some kind of school staff member, but his next words made my stomach fold in on itself. He pointed with a trembling finger toward the cul-de-sac, where a woman in bright floral pants and a messy bun strutted across the sidewalk, clutching a black medical case like she had just bought it at a yard sale. That was Karen, our neighborhood's self-appointed rule enforcer, HOA board member, parking, space spy, property, measurement hobbyist, and full-time menace. She swung that case like it belonged to her, her sandals slapping loudly against the pavement, chin lifted high with that familiar expression of "I deserve this, and no one will stop me." I felt heat crawl up my spine because no matter how petty she had been before, harassing teens for chalk drawings, demanding we repaint fences she didn't own, this was different, this wasn't annoying, this wasn't petty. This was dangerous. I helped Liam stand up and told him to breathe slowly, though I could barely breathe myself as I guided him toward my porch and grabbed my phone with shaking fingers. That machine wasn't a toy. It wasn't optional. Without it, he risked a medical emergency, and Karen had taken it like she was picking up lost and found. The breeze suddenly felt colder as I dialed his mother, and the world around me seemed to dim as the reality of the situation hit. If that device was damaged or lost, this child could literally stop breathing. By the time I reached Karen's driveway, she was rummaging through her garage like she was searching for a place to neatly display her new find. Her garage smelled like old cardboard and cheap potpourri, and the harsh fluorescent light flickered above her like it, too, was exhausted by her existence. I didn't even get a chance to speak before she whipped around and gave me that dyed, fake smile that always felt like a threat wrapped in a greeting card. "Oh, you're here for this," she chirped, patting the side of the medical case like she was petting a cat. My jaw clenched so hard I felt my teeth grind. I told her it belonged to Liam, that he needed it, that she couldn't just take someone's life, saving equipment off a child's backpack. But she rolled her eyes, stepped farther into her garage, and said something that made the temperature around me drop to freezing. "Please, that kid doesn't need this. It was cluttering the walkway at the bus stop, and HOA rules clearly state no personal trash can be left in common spaces. I'm logging it as abandoned property." Her voice was syrupy, sweet, but her words sliced through the air like glass. I stared at her, stunned, unable to process how a breathing device attached to a child could be mistaken for trash, much less abandoned. She pulled out a clipboard, yes, an actual clipboard, and scribbled something with a pink pen like she was issuing a formal citation. Rage simmered in my chest, but under that anger was something else, fear, real fear. Liam's breaths were already getting shallow. His mother was on her way, voice cracking with panic through the phone, and every second counted. I tried again, firmer this time, telling Karen she had 1 minute to hand over the equipment before things escalated. Her smile dropped, her nostrils flared, and then she stepped back, clutching the case tighter like she expected me to try and snatch it. "Touch me," she hissed, "and I'll have you charged with assault. I'm not giving it to you without proof it's his." Her tone shifted from smug to defensive, and for the first time I felt something off, something deeper than entitlement. She wasn't just refusing, she was hiding something. She was scared of being caught for something she wasn't even admitting yet. The case wasn't just a power trip. She was trying to cover up what she had actually done to get it. I didn't know it yet, but the twist waiting ahead would explain everything. The reason she wouldn't give it back, the reason she suddenly seemed afraid, the reason she kept checking over her shoulder like she expected someone else to appear. By the time Liam's mother pulled into my driveway, the tension in the air was thick enough to feel in my teeth. She jumped out of the car before the engine fully stopped, her eyes wild with fear and her hands trembling as she rushed toward us. Liam tried to be brave, but the way his breaths were shortening made panic spike through my veins. I reassured her as best as I could and pointed toward Karen's house, where the garage light flickered like a warning beacon. The morning air was turning sharp, leaves rustling with the rising wind, and every step we took toward that garage felt slower, heavier, harder. I could see Karen pacing inside like a cornered animal, clutching the medical case against her chest, muttering to herself under her breath. She froze when she saw Liam's mom storming toward her, and for the first time since this mess began, I saw uncertainty crack through her mask of arrogance. Liam's mom didn't shout at first. She didn't need to. Her voice came out steady, dangerously calm, the kind of controlled fury that made the hairs on my arms stand on end as she demanded Karen hand over her son's equipment immediately. Karen lifted her chin as if trying to reclaim authority, but her fingers tightened around the handle of the case, knuckles turning white. I told him. She snapped, flicking her eyes toward me, that this was left abandoned. HOA policy gives me the right to confiscate anything that... She didn't get to finish. Liam's mom cut her off sharply, explaining that the machine was medical, grade equipment, serialized, prescribed, and legally protected, and that if Karen damaged it, misplaced it, or refused to return it, she'd be held responsible for compromising a child's health. Karen's face twitched, and I watched her swallow hard. Suddenly, her bravado wasn't as strong. She shifted from foot to foot, looked toward the street, then back at us, like she was searching for someone who wasn't arriving. Her voice cracked slightly as she insisted she was just following community rules, but even she didn't seem to believe her own lie anymore. Something was seriously off. The fear in her eyes wasn't about HOA policy, it was about being caught. The wind picked up, slamming a loose piece of cardboard against her garage wall, the sound echoing sharply through the space and making her jump like she'd been slapped. Liam's breaths were getting worse. He leaned heavily on his mother's side, and she crouched beside him, her voice trembling as she tried to help him stay calm. My pulse hammered in my ears as I stepped forward again, tone sharper, and told Karen we didn't have time for games. Her eyes darted to me, then to the medical case, and finally she snapped, not angrily but fearfully. She blurted out a messy string of excuses, that she thought it was abandoned, that she assumed someone left it out intentionally, that she didn't know it belonged to a child, that she didn't mean harm. But the more she spoke, the less sense it made. She contradicted herself with every sentence, her voice rising and falling erratically. Liam's mom stared at her with open disbelief before her voice finally cracked into a shout, raw, emotional, breaking. "Give me my son's machine." The street suddenly filled with neighbors stepping outside, drawn by the noise. Some whispered, some frowned, some filmed. The collective attention made Karen's composure unravel faster, and she clutched the case like her life depended on it. "I can't give it to you," she yelled finally, the words bursting out of her like a confession she'd been holding back. The crowd murmured, confused. Liam's mother stiffened. I froze. Karen realized what she said and instinctively stepped back, bumping into a stack of plastic bins behind her. She tried to cover her slip, but she was shaking now, visibly shaking, as she forced a laugh. I mean not yet. There are procedures, inventory, documentation." She stammered, her words sloppy and desperate, eyes darting everywhere except at the terrified child gasping for breath beside me. That was the moment something clicked in my mind. She wasn't refusing out of principle. She was hiding the fact that she no longer had the device in the condition she took it. My eyes drifted to a small, crushed-looking cardboard box in the corner of her garage. Medical manuals, instruction papers, bubble wrap. A plastic connector tube snapped clean in half. My stomach dropped. She had opened the case. She had tampered with it. She had tried to disassemble it. And now she couldn't give it back because she had broken it. The truth hit me like a blow. She hadn't confiscated it for rules. She wasn't holding it for procedure. She was trying to hide the evidence that she had committed theft and then destroyed medical equipment worth thousands of dollars, equipment a child depended on to breathe. The neighbors were murmuring louder now, some stepping closer to get a better view, and Karen shrank back, pressing the case against her chest like it could shield her from the truth. Her lips trembled as she whispered something so soft I almost didn't hear it. I thought it was just some expensive gadget. I didn't know. Her voice cracked, but it didn't matter. Damage was done. And by the time the sirens echoed down the street, because Liam's mother had already called emergency services, Karen's face drained of all color, her grip on the case shaking violently. She realized what we already knew. What she stole wasn't property, it wasn't abandoned, it wasn't clutter. She had stolen medical equipment, tampered with it, damaged it, and concealed it. That wasn't an HOA violation, that was grand larceny involving medical gear. A felony, and as the red and blue lights swept across her garage walls, flickering over her terrified expression, the truth finally shattered whatever lies she had been trying to hold together. The paramedics arrived first, and everything exploded into motion at once, sharp commands, flashing lights, neighbors backing away as the professionals rushed in. One paramedic immediately knelt beside Liam, checking his breathing, while another asked his mother rapid-fire questions. I could feel the adrenaline still pounding through me, but seeing them handle him with trained urgency eased some of the tightness gripping my chest. Meanwhile, the second ambulance crew turned toward Karen, who stood frozen in the middle of her garage like a statue caught mid-crime. When one of the paramedics asked her for the device, she hesitated, clutching it with trembling fingers, and then, without a word, finally held it out. The moment he inspected it, his expression twisted with concern. "This has been tampered with," he said sharply, lifting the bent connector tube and cracked interior casing. "This could have failed completely." Liam's mother gasped, her hand flying over her mouth as she instinctively reached for her son. The paramedic's voice sharpened even further as he asked Karen if she had opened it, and the silence that followed was so heavy it felt like the entire neighborhood was holding its breath. Karen finally nodded, just once, barely more than a twitch, but it was enough. The shift in the paramedics' demeanor was immediate. They stepped away from her toward their radios, voices low but firm, as they requested police assistance for a case involving destruction of medical equipment. Karen's breathing picked up, her chest rising and falling in panicked jerks, her hands shaking violently now. She kept whispering excuses. "I didn't know. I thought it was something else. I didn't mean to," but the neighbors surrounding her weren't buying it. Phones were still recording, capturing every trembling word, every stutter, every pale, terrified expression she tried to hide behind her shaking hands. Then the police car rounded the corner, the slow, inevitable roll of justice. Blue lights flashed against the houses, painting everything in cold, sharp color. Karen's knees seemed to weaken as the officers approached, her voice rising in frantic sputters as she tried to explain herself, her words tripping over each other. The lead officer listened silently, expression unreadable, and then asked the only question that mattered. "Did you remove, tamper with, or damage this child's medical equipment?" The pause that followed felt like a lifetime. The street was silent except for Liam's controlled breaths through the temporary device the paramedics attached. Karen's eyes dotted wildly, searching for someone, anyone, to back her up, but no one did. Not one neighbor, not one witness, not even her usual HOA allies stepped forward. They just stared at her, stunned, ashamed, and disgusted. Finally, Karen broke. Her shoulders slumped, her arms dangling at her sides, and she nodded, defeated, trembling, her voice a cracked whisper of admission. The officer didn't hesitate. He read her rights right there at the edge of her driveway, the cold click of handcuffs slicing through the air as she let out a strangled cry. Her floral pants fluttered in the wind as she turned to look at the crowd, eyes wide with disbelief, as if she still couldn't grasp the reality she created for herself. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't HOA nonsense. This was a felony, theft and tampering of medical equipment valued in the thousands, endangering the life of a minor, and obstructing emergency care. The officer guided her into the back of the patrol car as she babbled weak apologies, her voice fading behind the closing door. Liam was stabilized and transported to the hospital for monitoring, his mother holding his hand tight as the ambulance pulled away. The crowd slowly thinned, people whispering in disbelief, some shaking their heads, others muttering how they knew she'd go too far one day. I stood there long after the street cleared, staring at the spot where Karen had stood, replaying everything in my mind, the lies, the excuses, the panic, and the truth that eventually slipped through the cracks. It chilled me to think how close this came to becoming a tragedy. One entitled decision, one careless act, one stolen device, that's all it took to nearly cost a child his life. The next week, the HOA held an emergency meeting, and for the first time, Karen's seat sat empty, officially revoked, permanently vacated, her name removed from every document. Word spread that she was facing multiple charges, including grand larceny and reckless endangerment, and that the judge denied her initial bail request, considering the seriousness of the crime. The neighborhood breathed easier without her constant surveillance and clipboard threats, but the lingering weight of her actions stayed with all of us. Liam recovered fully, and his parents installed new security measures, including a GPS tracker for the replacement device paid for by Karen's court-ordered restitution. In the end, the lesson was painfully clear: authority isn't about control, and community isn't about power. It's about protecting each other, respecting boundaries, and recognizing when a life is more important than a rulebook. If you believe accountability matters, hit like, share this story, and tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place.